doing a live feed because I've just found that I can. So I've just set up with a little piece of paper. It's round about 7 by 5, and I've just given my paints a little bit of a spritz to wake them up. And it's Mothering Sunday here. It's Mother's Day in the UK, so hopefully you can have a fun time painting. And as you can see, it's quite sunny here, so I hope that you are enjoying your day. And if you're on catch up afterwards, have a lovely day anyway, because that's how it is. So I'm just use my little spritzer bottle to wake my paints up, and then I'm going to be using mainly my Meaden mop brushes. This is my middle size, my small, and my large. Here they are. These are really good. They hold lots and lots of water, and they've got nice points, so the water's sort of held in the belly of the brush. Got some nice points, and I find those really useful. I'm using a number 1 little Boldmere brush quite a lot at the moment. I've got a number 4 round synthetic sable that I enjoy using from Winsor & Newton, and my little trusty rigger brush. Obviously lots of water. I've got my Cotman series watercolour paints. There are a few additions in there that I've added, but I don't think I'll be using those today. It's this set if anybody's interested, and just a set of papers that are cold pressed, 7.5 by 5, that you could just cut down something for. Plenty of paper towel, and so I'm just going to grab my pencil, and I'm going to just put in a few little sort of guidelines for this one. So this line's around about 1/3 of the way up, and I'm just going to pop in a little bit of a fence post across here, and a path that's sort of running down this side along. I'm just going to pop in roughly a tree. This is all out of my head, it's out of my imagination. I'll put a tree in there, and we're going for a spring. That's about it. That's all I want to do today. And we're going for a spring sort of vibe. A spring is in the air. So I'm just going to grab some cerulean blue, lots and lots of water to make a really weak, watery blue wash. Even more paint and water than that on my brush. Really watery. And I'm just going to go all the way down across, lots of water. I want it really distant. There, not there. Just water now. All the way across with a nice gentle cerulean blue wash across my paper. Just to put a little bit of background on. And then I'm just taking some of my lemon yellow hue, And again, I'm going to put in lots of water into there. And I'm just going to take some of the paint off using the edge of that palette and just dropping in. And because it's mixing on the paper, we end up with a really nice gentle yellowy green off the paper. So I'm going to put some distant trees down here. I'm just going to add a little touch more cerulean into that, still keeping it really light, really watery, really pale. I don't want a lot of colour, and I'm just adding another layer. Tap, 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 tap. Still wanting that lovely spring greeny vibe. That's lovely. While that's there, I'm just going to add a little bit of a spring green into this area. It's like an underwash. That's fine, it can run across the... And because the blue particularly separates out, you get some beautiful granulation of the colour. So I'm going to either let that dry or make it dry. I'm just going to paint a really nice spring landscape today. And I've just found that I can do a live feed, so I thought I might as well. So I'm just grabbing my hairdryer. Sorry, for a little minute. So I just wanted to take some of the water off with that. And it's lovely that people are joining me. If you want to support me, I do have a coffee account which I can drop in the comments, and that would help keep me on the road, so to speak, as I'm disabled, as many of us are in this community, and financially sometimes things can get a little bit tight for us all. So if you've got the means for that, that would be really helpful. So I'm just adding a little bit of ultramarine into that mix, tiny bit, oh, a little bit too much. And so ultramarine, cerulean blue and lemon yellow mixed together makes a beautiful green. So I'm going to just move that into this palette, and I'm just going to add some more water, because in watercolour adding the water helps just push it back a little bit. And I'm going to add another gentle layer of green, building up the texture on the of the leaves on the trees. And then just adding in a tiny touch of that ultramarine. Still lots of water. Take a little bit of the paint off on a paper towel and just build that texture up. And you're just building the layers of the trees up. little bit more blue, a little bit more ultramarine, building a little bit more of the layers up. So as you can see, we're starting to see a canopy, a little bit of the grassland and a path. So if you're joining me from somewhere, if you can let me know where you are, that would be really, really lovely. I'm currently on the northwest coast in England, and it's a beautiful day. I live with a lot of chronic illnesses, which means that I struggle to get out and about, but I do love how painting gives me the escapism of being able to sort of go out in my imagination and see things that I possibly can't actually see, which is always a bit of a bonus. So whilst this is drying, I'm going to turn my attention to the path. It is slightly damp here, but it'll be fine. We're going to mix up some raw umber, which is a light brown colour, and to make the path lie flat we need to do horizontal strokes across the path. And that's like base wash. I'm just going to go into that side. So for me, the sun is coming from this direction in my painting. I quite often will draw a sun on my masking tape to remind me of the direction. So I'm going to just pick up again some sepia or some burnt umber, a darker brown, and where the sun's hitting will be this side, so I want to just darken the shadow side of the path whilst it's wet. It's like everything, you can just drop it in and it'll soften across and you get some really nice sense of perspective. I'm just going to drop that horizon line a little bit there. So that was just, I wet my brush, I took some water off it and sucked up the extra paint because I put too much on too high up. I'm just going to go back in and that tap tap tap, and it starts to build the depth of the path, and so you can start to see that there's a lighter side and a darker side with that. So I'm just going to log on another phone, and then I can just drop on the coffee link, and then if anybody wants to support me and the work, that's how I'm working at the moment, is through the coffee app. And I also have a online shop, and the shop's at a very reasonable price, and I will drop the shop link into the chat as well. I do ship all over the world, so if you're interested, please do get in touch or just go on my shop and see what's there. That would be lovely. So I've worked out how to do it. So that's my online shop, and this is my coffee link if anybody's feeling like they want to support my work. So it's been lovely. I can actually see you all online now because I've got my iPad up and running. So this is my first ever time going live, so I hope you're enjoying it, really. So I've just let this start to dry. It's not fully dry, you can tell, because the paper's bubbly still, but it's dry enough to put another layer in. So I'm still darkening that mix of greens, so cerulean blue, ultramarine blue and lemon yellow, mixed together, a slightly thicker paint consistency. I like using the two blues because when it granulates out you see a different colour, and the ultramarine's slightly heavier, so it sort of drops out of the mix. So I'm still using my medium mop brushes. I'm just tapping in some leaves. There we go. Start. And then I'm just going to add some more blue, some more ultramarine blue into that mix. Keep just slightly darkening, mixing it up. A little bit more ultramarine blue. And I'm building up that sort of sense of a canopy of leaves. Brighter at the top, darker towards this bottom edge. Trying to keep everything loose. Just keep adding a little touch of ultramarine into that mix. And then you're going to just let it dry a little bit. So I'm moving now onto my small mop brush. So here it is, my little small mop brush, and I'm going to paint a tree on this side. So I'm going to start with some burnt umber. A nice yummy colour. And I'm just going to run up and the main branches of trees tend to sort of go upwards and they separate out. This is all out of my imagination. I haven't seen this tree and neither have you, and that's the beauty of painting like this, because it's out of your head. I'm just going to run that into the base wash. I'm going to probably put a bigger branch coming across here as well. So just a really straightforward tree, and I'm just going to add in a touch of ultramarine into that brown wash of burnt sienna. So burnt sienna, darker brown, and ultramarine, which will darken it again. Taking the excess now off onto my paper towel, remembering that the sun's coming from the right hand side, so I'm going to darken the side where the shadows are on the branches. And if you look at trees, you tend to see that where the branches join the main trunk is darker as well. So I'm just darkening. Yeah, I might put a darker little branch up here. Darkening. Just darken where the branch is split. A darker bit onto that side. There we go. And I want, so that's like a middle tone dark. So I want a darker one still. So more ultramarine and more dark brown, thicker paint, thicker consistency. And I'm going to actually put a touch of Payne's Grey into here as well. So again, taking the excess off. And I'm just going to drop in, again staying on this right hand side for most of it. Just tap, 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 tap. There we go. So we've got that coming, and I'm just going to wet, I've got a wet brush, take a little bit of the, I'm just going to soften that base into the base of the grassland. So again, with a damp brush, you can lift off some highlights on the right, just running a little bit of water down there. A nice way to just get some highlights and for it to look a lot more realistic from your painting. So I'm going to just put a darker green now. This has dried off a little bit into there. So I'm going to just do a little touch of Payne's Grey, ultramarine and the yellow together, a fairly thick consistency to make a nice juicy dark green. So a fair amount of ultramarine in the mix. And the Payne's Grey just darkens it a little touch. If you haven't got Payne's Grey, you could put a little bit of lamp black in, that would work. But be aware with black, it does make the colour less translucent. So I'm just putting a bit of shadow green, a bit more olivey because you've into the mix. As if we've got a little bush or a little tree in this corner. I'm just going to add a little bit more Payne's Grey into that mix as it's going darker at the base. Take the excess off my paper towel. And then you've got a softening at the base, there we go. So you've got a layer of greens there. And now we're going to just put some trees on. So I'm going to start with my burnt umber and lots of clean water. So just take the excess off on your paper towel, and these are going to go in as some of the distant trees. A couple of distant trees coming through. Remember that watercolour always comes a little bit lighter every time, so you'll lose round about 30% of your colour on wet on wet, and a little bit less if you're doing wet on dry like this is. And I'm just going to use some sepia to darken the left hand side of these trees whilst they're wet, and these trees are just going to help build that sort of depth. Going through the forest. So I want to make the trees in the distance. I'm just going to lift that out. Just going to make some more trees in the distance, and I want those a little bit grayer. So I'm just going to add a touch of cadmium red light and a touch of the blue into that brown, so that you're going to get a much sort of more faded tree colour. And we're going to just put a thinner, more distant tree sort of pushing back into there. So you're just pushing back a little bit more of that cerulean blue in the mix. And we're going to push some more back here. A bit of lost and found through that foliage. And as it dries, it'll dry lighter, but you want those into the background. I'm going to add a little bit more blue. So you're just building that sort of that idea that there are other trees other than the main one that you've got in your painting. And the brushes are super at just holding enough water. It allows you to just do this with just this straightforward mop brushes. So here we go. So we've now got some trees that are background trees. These are a little bit more mid-ground, so I'm going to just bring some darker trees into this sort of set of trees. So I'm going to still use the burnt umber as my base for that, and I'm just going to add a tiny bit of Payne's grey into there. Again, if you haven't got Payne's grey, you could just add a little bit of ultramarine, and you're just going to, so if I had a tree here, I wouldn't see the base, I'd see a little bit going through here, a little bit going through here, maybe a split off of a branch, maybe a split off of a branch. some smaller branches up here. So and then wet your brush, take the water out and just lift off some highlights on the sunny side of the tree. So here we are, we've got a foreground tree, a midground tree. I might just put one more midground tree, but I want it to be slightly lighter, so I'm just adding a little bit of cerulean blue into there. I'm going to put another tree coming up here. Branch. I'm just going to darken this branch off so that it knows that it's in the foreground. Make it a bit bumpier because branches tend to be bumpy. Put some branches in front of some spaces and going through the canopy here. It's got a nice tree trunk water off on the brush, and then just pick up some of that sunny side of the tree. So we've got a nice foreground path. Whilst this darks on, I'm going to just use a little bit to add a little bit of dimension across this path. Just building up a little bit of texture on that path. Because it was on my brush. And so now I'm going to put in that little sort of fence line that's going to go across here and then under this part as well. So I'm going to mix myself some yummy browns and ultramarine to make a nice dark brown. Fairly thick paint consistency, probably single cream. And I'm just taking some of the paint off. I'm just going to drop in a fence post and another fence post and another fence post and probably one here. And so, straightforward little fence. And then there's going to be a gateway. So I have another fence post on this side and another fence post. And these are getting nearer and larger. and we can darken them on the edge of here. So I'm just going to make my mixture a little bit thicker and drop in a bit more brown. And so I've got 2 fences on. I'm just going to add a bit of a glaze of that brown onto these fences. And so here we are. So we've got a tree and some distant trees. I might just add a few more whilst I've got some brown on my, a few more branches and sort of ideas of trees coming through this area. And I'm just going to take water, just run it down the inside of those trees. There we go. I think we've got quite a nice little forest here going there. So I'm going to just use that same brush, so that was my little number 1, and I'm just going to put a little bit more information on this path. So a tiny bit of burnt sienna, I think, on this one, and a bit of that dark colour, which was there that I was using for. I'm just going to, so remember that this right hand side of the path is where the dark is, so I'm just going to add that in. More information, more dark. Let me just, somebody's asking for the link for the channel. Let me just pop that up. Sorry for the little delay, but that's how it is. So just building this path, I'm just going to go a little bit darker near the foreground. And I'm just going to get a softer brush water, and then I'm just going to run some water through, pushing and softening some bits. Here we go. So I've got a tree. I now want to put a little bit of foliage on this tree because it's looking a little bit dull. So I've got a piece of kitchen sponge, and I'm just going to add some of this pale green that I started with over here and just dab on to start creating the foliage for this tree. And I'm just adding a little bit of the darker tone into that green that I've got on the palette. Just building up some foliage for the tree. So you're wanting a rough surface, you might need to pick out some bits. So hello, whoever's joined me. It's quite fun, painting live on YouTube. And we're just using a bit of a sponge scourer to paint the leaves on this tree that we've put in the foreground. And because you're using a different technique, it gives a different texture to the leaves and lets you have that sort of sense of a different, that the tree's further forward. So I've just mixed up a green with a little bit of new gamboge yellow rather than the lemon yellow in. I'm just going to, and it brings it into a bit of a brighter but still olivey green because it's still got the ultramarine in there. And I'm just building up this little tree in the foreground. So I'm going to just add a little bit more of that dark into there, gradually building it up, remembering that the sun's coming. So it's darker on this side and underneath. Lots of little bits of darks. And as always, you've got a little bit of less is more. It's an illustration, it's an idea of a tree, it's not a photograph. That's not how I paint. So now I'm going to move on to here. So for this one I'm going to mix up some pink and some purple together, so whichever your favourite pinks and purples are, and then I'm going to add into this sort of pinky purple mix a little bit of ultramarine blue. So there's my pinky mix, my pink and purple mix. I'm just going to add a little bit of ultramarine blue into there. And I think that's quite a good bluebell colour, because in the UK at this time of year we get lots of beautiful bluebells coming in the woods. So I'm going to make this into a little bit of a bluebell wood. So these are in the background. So I've just put some dabs on and I'm just going to soften with a little bit of water across some of these. I want them to go into the background. I want them to be a soft, a little bit out of focus. There we go. I think we could just add a little bit more ultramarine into that mix. It's quite pink. I'm just going to go over that with a little bit more ultramarine. Yeah, that's better. So actually bluebells are quite bluey colour. If you wanted to make it a poppy field, you just need to do a similar thing with the red hue. So I'm just coming a little bit forward with this some little clumps of bluebells in the wood. So now I'm going to mix up using that new gamboge yellow, which is a warmer, brighter yellow. So new gamboge hue, and I'm going to add some ultramarine into that mix, and it makes a really bright green. So I want the contrast to the leaves, and I'm just going to drop in some of this bright green colour, little flicks up, and just building up that sort of idea of the grass at the edge. Say hello if you're watching. We're just making a little bit of a bluebell wood. It's lovely that you can come and join me today. Around the base of those. I want to keep moving this so you can see the light, but hopefully chasing the British sunshine. So I live on the northwest coast of England. As a disabled artist there, I live with many chronic conditions like many people, and painting is my escape. It's what I love. So I'm just building up little tiny flicky marks with my small mop brush to build up the idea of the bright green that goes with this, the bluebells when they come out. And I like the contrast in the greens. And I'm going to go back in with a little bit of a darker green on the foreground. Put little flicks, changing direction. Letting you brush down so you could have a little bit on the pathway, I suppose. I like the little bits around the bottom of the... So we're just building that up. So I like this part that's now mixed together. I'm going to mix, still using that new gamboge yellow, a little bit of ultramarine, maybe a little bit more than I had, like a slightly darker colour. I'm just going to add some darker, more olivey green. And if you wanted, you could use your rigger brush for this, or your little number 4, depends how comfortable you are. So dropping some wet in wet on there. And just using the edge of the tape as a guide. And whilst that's on my brush, I'm going to just drop a few back here as well. So a tiny bit more ultramarine in there, just for these few in the foreground. Because as things come forward, you tend to get it a little bit darker. So there we go. We've got a lovely little hi, whoever SJ Wells is. It's nice to have you along. So here we are. We've got a out of my head imagination of a little bluebell wood today. We've managed to put some distant trees, so it's got that feel of going back into a foresty space, We've got the trees coming through the canopy, and then this lovely little bluebell wood. I think I'd quite like to go down that path and see where it leads me. So I hope you've enjoyed joining me if you've joined me live, and if you're on catch up, that's lovely. Drop me a comment in the chat. I'd love to know where you're from. If you like what I do, like and subscribe, and hopefully have an explore of some of my other things. They are what I call slow and low tech, because that's me, and I do enjoy a bit of slow and low tech, but there's nothing wrong with a little bit of slow and low tech. So hopefully we'll see you soon, and have fun painting. I'm going to work out and say bye-bye.
I'll just sign off for a while to watch it.